Adrian Glover, a researcher in the zoology department at the Natural History Museum in London. And I've been involved in an Antarctic project with the US Antarctic program, so we've been looking at marine environments around Antarctica, particularly the effects of sea ice and the great seasonality that occurs in the Antarctic environment. I was fortunate enough to go to Antarctica, invited with the US Antarctic program. What we were looking at was, in simple terms, the effect of the striking seasonality that you get in the Antarctic region. Antarctica is a very special place. It's an area where the land is essentially covered by a huge lump of ice, whereas the marine environment is a tremendously productive environment where you have krill and penguins and whales and a huge amount of biodiversity. So as a marine biologist, it's a fascinating place for me to work. As I was there for almost 3 months. We were researching on a boat, quite a large oceanographic boat, collecting samples from essentially the sediments at the bottom of the ocean, so about 50 to a sort of 500 meters water depth. Antarctica, it is a strikingly strange and sort of wonderful place in many ways. I would say, as someone working in the marine environment, you don't suffer the extremes of temperature that you do in very far inland. You're sort of buffered to some extent by the seawater around you. But of course, in the winter months, you get sea ice, so actually the ocean freezes over, and the boat we're working on is sort of surrounded by ice. And then it can get very cold very quickly. It still is a very remote place, and there's no doubt that you're aware of that when you're there. It's a continent, and it's a huge continent, almost the size of Australia. At the same time, you know that you stare at the continent and you realise there's nobody else there, really, apart from the small science community. So that does sort of put things in perspective. It's a period of isolation, but I would say that the isolation is no different to experience anywhere else where you go to sea. And I go to sea quite a lot on research boats where you're isolated from your friends and family and so on. Nowadays, with satellite communications and internet, you can pick up a phone anywhere in the world and speak to someone. So it's not the same as it was 50 years ago, and certainly not the same as it was 100 years ago. But at the same time, I think that you're so excited to be there, and you feel that you're so sort of blessed with luck and being able to work in such a beautiful and unusual place. I wouldn't actually say that suffering comes into it too much. I think that most people would give their right arm to go to Antarctica. There's 2 wow factors. I mean, one I say from a scientific point of view is when we're bringing organisms up from the marine environment around Antarctica. A great percentage of the animals we bring up are new to science, so there are new species there that we've not found before. The other, sort of more personal point of view, is when we called in at one of the US bases on the Antarctic Peninsula. It was quite striking, and I had the opportunity to go and walk on my own up the glacier behind the base, and it was just an astonishing sort of silence that you're surrounded by. Walking up onto the glacier behind the station, getting out of sight and out of earshot of the boat and the goings on the marine base. Suddenly I found myself standing on top of an ice sheet looking out across the Antarctic continent, and that was quite a special moment, actually.